Now, according to Massachusetts lore, there is a particularly creepy paranormal pedestrian who stalks Route 44 between Taunton Avenue and Winthrop Street. This stretch of highway links Providence, Rhode Island, and Rehoboth, Massachusetts. And Rehoboth is a small town which marks the southwestern vertex of the famed Fortean region known to some as the Bridgewater Triangle. The Route 44 hitchhiker sports red hair, a beard, and a red flannel shirt. He usually wears jeans or brown work pants. He seems to be between 35 and 50 years old. Although witnesses consistently mention the red hair and the red shirt, one detail tends to shift: the eyes. You see their color changes. Some people say that they appear dark and dead, and others say that the eyes emit a strange glow. Many people call this ghost the red-haired hitchhiker or something similar to that. I consider him indistinguishable from an entity known as the Flannel Man. The Flannel Man is an underappreciated American spook who has recently been promoted a great deal by Fortean podcaster Timothy Renner. In the accounts collected by Renner, Flannel Man tends to pop up inside private dwellings. In other words, you don't go looking for him, he looks for you. The great exception? Route 44. On that highway, Flannel Man, or a spook with a very similar taste in couture, saunters down the street during the wee small hours. Those who seek him should pay particular attention to the area around the intersection of Route 44 and Wilmarth Bridge Road. At least, so say the local paranormal aficionados. The first book to discuss the phantom of U.S. Route 44 was Charles Turek Robinson's The New England Ghost Files, published in 1997. Now, I have to admit, most paranormal books are sloppy, and they're sensationalistic, and they're not very convincing. But this one, it's surprisingly good. It's far more rigorously researched than such compilations tend to be. Robinson, who received his degree in anthropology from Harvard, carefully interviewed his witnesses on multiple occasions to see if their stories would shift over time, and they did not. Shortly before his death in 2017, Robertson told an interviewer that he was 5,000 miles away from belief in ghosts when he began his project, but he ended up only inches away. Although, like me, he never went the full distance. The most memorable report concerns a couple whose station wagon broke down on Route 44. The woman stayed inside the vehicle while the man went out to find a phone, and while walking, the man saw the red-haired flannel man sitting beside the road. The phantom's eyes went white, and his ominous laughter sent the man running back to the station wagon, where his wife had heard the same entity speaking to her on the radio. The voice on the radio had called her by name and then guffawed threateningly. And incidentally, this is not the only haunted highway known for reports of radio interference. I could devote an entire video to other such reports in other parts of the country. As much as I admire Robinson's methodology, his book does suffer from a perhaps inevitable problem. He does not name the witnesses, and I can understand why they requested anonymity. But the lack of checkable detail, it's still kind of frustrating. An online search reveals that after the book's publication, many other people have had claimed encounters with the ghost of Route 44. Here's one that's pretty typical. He was working late one night doing a long job that took him to Seekonk. On his way back, he was on Route 44 in Rehoboth, and he saw a guy with red hair and a beard wearing a red flannel shirt walking in the middle of the road. He thought this was really strange to see someone out walking around at 2:30 a.m., and he slowed down to drive around the guy. After he passed the guy, he looked in the mirror, and the guy was gone. He thought maybe the guy turned and walked into the woods, so he keeps going. Another mile down the road, he sees another guy walking in the middle of the road. Now he's thinking, WTF? Here's another guy walking in the road, but he looks just like the other guy. This time, the driver slows way down to pass, and as he goes by, he hears the guy muttering something. Again, after he passes the pedestrian, he looks in the mirror, and the guy is gone. Now, my coworker is totally freaked out. He said the hair was standing up on the back of his neck, but he continues on his way. This time, he starts driving a little faster. He gets about another mile down the road, and then he sees the guy in the red flannel shirt once again, walking in the middle of the road. This time, he was in a panic, and he didn't even bother slowing down. He just nailed the gas, and he drove around the guy, not even looking in the mirror. We even have some accounts from named witnesses. The following story appeared in the Wicaset newspaper of October the 27th, 2023. Joseph Wolfe, while driving alone down a lonely stretch of Route 44 in rural Seekonk, Massachusetts, experienced a very startling occurrence in the winter of 1969. It was about 11:30 p.m., and as he proceeded down the dark highway, Joe suddenly witnessed a bizarre apparition. "I saw a man's face outside the car. It was pressed against the passenger side window," he recalled anxiously. "This was physically impossible. My car was traveling about 50 miles an hour. The face was looking in at me, grinning. I could see that the man had red hair and was wearing a red plaid shirt. I swerved off the highway and brought my car to a stop. By that time, the man had vanished. After about 10 minutes, I finally calmed down enough to restart my car and drive home. That incident has left me shaken up for the past 25 years. Later in the same article, Fred Durpus, a resident of Seekonk, Massachusetts, allegedly encountered the Phantom on a summer evening in 1973 when he was traveling that part of Route 44 in his pickup truck. "I saw a man hitchhiking on the highway," he recalls. "He was about 40, and he had thick red hair. He was wearing blue jeans and a red plaid shirt. He looked normal enough, so I stopped to give him a lift. It was fairly late, about 10 p.m., and I thought that maybe his car had broken down." Fred pulled to the side of the highway, about 30 feet in front of the hitchhiker. In his rear-view mirror, he could see the red-headed man hurrying toward the truck. "He reached the truck and climbed in," Fred indicates. "I pulled back onto the highway and began to drive. I asked the man where he was going. He looked at me sort of blankly for a minute, and then he smiled. He didn't say anything, so I asked him again where he was going. He just kept smiling at me. He was starting to make me feel a little uneasy. I pulled the truck to the side of the road, and I told him to get out. He did get out. Not quite the way I was expecting. He didn't open the door and climb out of the truck. Instead, he just vanished, right in front of my eyes. He started to get very hazy until I began to see through him, and then he just disappeared. Took me a long time to accept what I saw that night." Barbara Sutton's encounter with the Phantom was even more unsettling. On the evening of February the 25th, 1981, the Taunton resident was driving home after a visit with her daughter in Seekonk. After she proceeded down a dark section of Route 44, she suddenly saw a man standing in the middle of the highway about 50 feet ahead of her car. "He appeared out of nowhere," she says. "I was going about 60, and he was just suddenly standing there in the middle of the road. There was no time to brake or even to swerve the car. In a matter of seconds, I ran him over. I thought I had. Actually, my car passed right through him. There was no damage to my car. When I stopped the car and checked the road, there was absolutely no trace of the man. It just made no sense." Feeling shaken but relieved that she had not actually hit someone, Barbara began to walk back to her car. All of a sudden, she heard something startling. "I heard this loud, horrible laughter coming from the woods to the side of the road, right near the spot where I thought I hit the man," Barbara remembers. "The laughter was terrible. I quickly got into my car and locked the doors. I started the car and I pulled back out onto the highway. After driving along the highway for about another half mile, Barbara was suddenly startled to see the strange man again, standing in the middle of the road. Like before, he just appeared out of nowhere in front of my car. I had no time to stop or to swerve. I drove into him, but my car passed right through him, just like the last time. There was no thud or anything. I stopped the car at the side of the road, but this time I didn't get out. I just stuck my head out of the window and I could see that the road was empty. Then I suddenly began to hear that laughter again, except this time it was even more horrifying because it sounded much closer, like it was coming from just outside the car, only a few feet away. I quickly rolled up the window and pulled my car back out onto the highway. I floored my car and just flew out of there." And that's the end of the section from the Wicaset newspaper of October the 27th, 2023. Now, according to rumor, the flannel man sometimes favors cars carrying 3 people, a driver and 2 passengers. One variant of the story holds that the flannel man may possess the front seat passenger. Now, I don't have any first-hand witnesses to these stories. Maybe one day we will have a first-hand witness, but right now we don't. This should go without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Many people drive down this stretch of highway every day, and they never see anything out of the ordinary. Cops who patrol this road probably don't appreciate the legend trippers who come here, so if you do decide to scope out this stretch of highway, I suggest that you drive cautiously. You're much likelier to meet the boys in blue than the man in red. Madera is a small city just north of Fresno, California. It is surrounded by many miles of flat farmland. Crops are grown in half-mile squares bounded on all four sides by straight and narrow lanes. The streets running north-south are labeled avenues, while the streets running east and west are called roads. Now this checkerboard pattern seems to go on forever, square after square after square. After midnight, very few drivers use these avenues and roads, and absolutely nobody walks. There are no buildings. There's no place to go. And yet, a growing number of after-midnight motorists have been seeing a dark walker in this area. They see this man on Avenue 15, on Avenue 18.5, and on various streets and avenues in between. The walker travels down the exact center of the road during the wee small hours of the morning. He never looks up. He pays no heed to traffic, even when cars traveling at night nearly smash into him. The following comes from the Weird Fresno website. The first recorded sighting happened in January of 2010 when a witness and her husband were driving home to Clovis from Madera on Avenue 15. They were driving down the country road when the witness suddenly saw a man walking down the middle of the road and had to quickly swerve to avoid hitting him. The man seemed oblivious to almost being hit, despite the fact that the car was going almost 60 miles per hour. The witness described the figure as Caucasian, in his early 20s, wearing a dark sweatshirt with a hood and blue jeans. After they passed him, they hit a thick patch of fog and the man was nowhere to be seen. The witness notes that her husband did not see the man at all, despite looking in the same direction as she, and he was surprised by her sudden swerving of the vehicle. Now this same figure, wearing the same gray hoodie and showing the same preference for walking on the divider line, continues to reappear. Strangely enough, the witnesses to Madera Man, as he is often called, usually are female. In the example above, the husband could not see the man, even when looking directly at him. The following comes from the Ghosts of America website. One night, my cousin and I were heading back from a show in Fresno to Madera. We took Avenue 15 like we always did, and we didn't think anything of it, because we had never heard stories about the Madera Man. When we passed the first stop sign, we saw a strange man wearing blue jeans and a gray hoodie. He was looking down while he was walking, which I didn't think very much of at the time. He was walking right on the road nonchalantly, and it was late at night. I'm talking about 1:30 a.m. At first I thought, damn, these hitchhikers have balls, and I just passed by him like nothing. It wasn't until now that these stories have surfaced that I too indeed have seen the Madera Man walking on Avenue 15. Now that I think about it, it sends chills up my spine. Now, there was a TikTok video which discussed the Madera Man phenomenon, and it got some replies from people who claimed to have seen the phantom firsthand. One witness insisted that the strange man made a suicidal dash right towards the oncoming car. Another correspondent claimed to have seen the phantom walker at the eastern end of Avenue 9, where the road leads up to the Children's Hospital. Another report places the man on Highway 145. In fact, lately, he's been seen all over this extended checkerboard of a landscape. One correspondent wrote, I've seen something similar on Avenue 12, and this was back in like 2015. I was coming back to Fresno and I saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. I kept driving and like 1 mile later, there he was again. Now, I want everybody watching this video to rest assured, every one of the rational, skeptical objections which has popped into your noggin has also popped into mine. The evidence at hand is, well, frankly, we can barely call it evidence, can we? I mean, the websites mentioned above are hardly the most authoritative that the internet has to offer, and since dash cams are now quite common, it is not unreasonable to ask for visual evidence of the phantom walker of Madera. But even if our informants are telling the truth, I suppose it is possible that a lone farm worker simply enjoys strolling down the middle of the highway in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. It's also possible that the strange farm worker thinks that vehicular manslaughter is no biggie. We turn our attention to Wisconsin. This story concerns Sauk County, Wisconsin. We're looking at Highway 12, which is also called the Iron Brigade Memorial Highway. To be specific, we are looking at a section of Highway 12, which runs for about 24 miles between Wisconsin Dells and Roxbury. If you drive down this stretch of road, you'll encounter some rather eerie-sounding place names. Just south of Baraboo, former home of the Ringling Brothers Circus, you will find Devil's Lake State Park, and just south of that is the Devil's Nose State Natural Area. Before the Europeans arrived, one Indian tribe referred to Devil's Lake as Tewakakak, or Sacred Lake, while another called it Minnewakan, or Spirit Lake. Does the lake have its own monster? Of course. But this is not the usual lake serpent. The Nakota told tales of gigantic tentacles which would rise out of the lake and drag canoes down into the murky depths. In other words, the lake is the home of a giant octopus thingy, close kin to Cthulhu perhaps. Decades ago, the forest around this lake was said to be haunted by, I kid you not, ghost elephants. Throughout the 1970s, many visitors heard trumpeting, and not the kind associated with Wynton Marsalis. A few lucky souls even saw the spectral elephants on parade. It's tempting to theorize that someone tried to reintroduce old circus elephants into the wild. But I fear that we've gotten sidetracked. Our focus is supposed to be on Highway 12. A phantom walker reportedly haunts this road. He's a rather young male. He has a beard, scraggly black hair, blue jeans, and a distinctive green army jacket. People who see him say that he gives off kind of a late 1960s vibe. Sometimes he is described as a hitchhiker, sometimes he's simply a guy walking down the road. Drivers take notice of him because he always seems to be in a very unsafe position. This stretch of highway is not very well lit, and much of it is not really set up for pedestrian traffic. So, if you pass by the fellow in the green army jacket, he may very well reappear a mile down the road. Same scraggly-haired dude, same distinctive green jacket. And if you pass him again, he shows up again. So the question is, how the hell does he get ahead of you? I do not know what happens if you pick him up. Frankly, I've yet to read a first-hand report from a named witness to this phenomenon. Tales of the hitchhiker usually trace back to this guy I know who knows a guy. Some online accounts suggest that those hoping to spot the hitcher may want to concentrate on, quote, the S-curve near Skillet Creek. And finally, we're off to Iowa. Muscatine, Iowa is a fairly small town which definitely punches above its weight when it comes to the production of paranormal folklore. From a Fortean perspective, there's a lot going on in Muscatine that we could be talking about. But for present purposes, we are concerned with a widely covered phenomenon which commanded the attention of local journalists back in 2016 and 2017, but has not really been talked about since. In those years, residents spotted men in black, not the kind dramatized by Hollywood in those famous motion pictures. We're talking about men in black trench coats. About 7 miles south of the town of Muscatine, Ogilvie Avenue becomes F Avenue at the county line. This is a remote road through farm country, and pedestrian traffic is almost unheard of. And yet, in the summer of 2016, a number of motorists in the area traveling down this road at night noticed men in black trench coats walking down the road, sometimes in the center of the lane, and usually in the very dead of night. These men in black then ventured onto other roads nearby. Occasionally, they made a beeline across private property. According to this report, Iowa resident R.J. Strong encountered one of these dark walkers at 2 in the morning. Afterward, Strong posted on Facebook that he was traveling near Ogilvie and F Avenues in Muscatine County when he saw some weirdo walking down the paved road in a black trench coat. Several others on social media have reported similar sightings in recent weeks. According to the reports, the individuals have been seen standing beside roadways and sometimes stepping into roadways as motorists are passing at locations across Muscatine County in southeastern Iowa. My son has experienced this, and it's no joke, posted Beatrice Wilson Strong. It was really a frightening experience for him. It's happened to a few friends of mine out on Highway 22, posted Cassie Papaticki. The Muscatine County Sheriff's Office has taken notice, posting Monday on its Facebook page, We have had several reports of men dressed in black entering the roadway in rural Muscatine County. Several people have told KWQC that these same individuals have been spotted walking across homeowners' yards. End quote. Could these be pranksters? Perhaps. But very few pranksters would consider missing a night's sleep just to pull off this kind of dumb trick. Unfortunately, most of the really intriguing reports come to us by way of Facebook. I do not consider that to be the world's most reliable source of information. In fact, highway phantom stories never really have a strong evidentiary foundation. Skeptics will point out that fatigued drivers will sometimes misperceive shadows as figures. That explanation may cover some of these reports, but it does not cover all. Despite the rather iffy provenance, I really like these stories. I guess I like them because they remind me of one of the very best episodes of the old Twilight Zone TV series. I'm thinking of an episode called The Hitchhiker. It's about a young lady on a cross-country road trip, and as she travels, a dark-clad hitchhiker keeps popping up upon the side of the road, and it's always the same guy, no matter where she goes. Now, when I was a young boy, something about this scenario just gave me the cosmic heebie-jeebies. And to this day, I've never forgotten the way I felt the first time I saw that episode. And that's the reason why I just had to put together this video, submitted for your approval. And if you like these kinds of stories, please like and subscribe. I would love to be in a position to make these kinds of videos all the time. And to those who already have subscribed, many, many thanks.